All right. On June 7th, 2021, Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were murdered. The person who called it in was Alex Murdaugh. This is our deep dive into the Alex Murdaugh case regarding Paul and Maggie Murdaugh.
Some of my content has mention of extreme violence, sexual assault, and/or other triggering content. Discretion is advised.
All right, we're back.
We're back.
For more Murdaugh mystery. It's Saturday, but we're going to call it Monday. Murdaugh Mystery Monday. Yeah, Mania.
We're recording on a Sunday or Saturday.
It feels like Sunday.
We're probably going to post this on a Tuesday.
But we're going to call it Monday because it rhymes with Murdaugh.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm sorry for that. That was... okay, so what I would like to say first is please check out our previous video of the summary. It's going to help this make a lot more sense.
It's an overview. It was 2 episodes ago. Right in between, I just did a video that was just a one-off, but very important. But before that was our overview. Go check that out.
Yeah, who was, I apologize, was it Phoenix? That was in between
Cauldron.
Phoenix Cauldron? Yeah. So go check out Phoenix Cauldron too, but that one's not going to tie into this one. The summary that we did on the Murdaugh case is going to tie into this one. And there's going to be a lot of references to that summary because it's really hard to do this deep dive without the backstory of all the other cases that Alec Murdaugh was involved in. So, and is involved in. So there's going to be a lot of callbacks to that. So please check that out first. I'll try to summarize what each part is and how it pertains to other cases as we get there, but it's much better on the summary. So, are you ready?
Yes, before I do want to say, we are almost at our listens for Spotify to get basically ambassador ads. So if you have not went and followed us on Spotify, please do so. That helps us out. Also, we're really close on YouTube as well.
Pause.
Just open the door.
Oh, I thought somebody was coming in. Ghost.
There's a ghost.
There's a ghost.
Go ahead and close it though.
I'm uncomfortable.
Okay.
So maybe we should not be filming this. I mean, the ghost might want to subscribe. Thank you, Ghost.
Thank you, Ghost.
I don't know how you got a YouTube account and a Spotify account, but cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So
we're shook. We're back.
our ghost just opened up the door, and that was weird.
It's happened before.
Yeah. Anyway, please go subscribe, like, share. It just helps us out. But let's just jump into it.
Yeah, and what she was saying before the ghost so rudely interrupted, you jerk. You were saying we're close on ambassador ads, which is basically we're just close on Spotify follows and listens, right?
Yep.
And then we're also super close on YouTube monetization.
Mm-hmm.
We are at 800 subscribers, so you guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
If any of your friends like true crime, feel free to send us out. That would be cool because we're close there too.
Yep.
And if we hit those and start actually having some monetization come in, we might be able to do more of these.
Right. We'll be able to do more. We'll be able to have better quality.
We might even be able to have merch someday. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a goal of ours for a while.
Yep.
So, all right, we can jump into it.
Yes.
All right, so as I said in the leadoff, the case that was ongoing over these past few weeks was for Alec Murdaugh. He was accused of killing his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul. That case is now actually wrapped up. So we're going to go through some of the case notes from things that happened in the case. We'll go through some timelines because the timelines in this case is what gets really messy. What's really interesting to me about this is there is a ton of technology related data that puts out markers for the timeline. And so that was insanely interesting to me because I work in the tech field. So for me, it's really interesting to see all the things that have data points on them. So in this case, there was a forensics expert that literally traced Alec's phone, Alec's records, the GPS in the car. It literally had every time the car booted up. It had every time, when I say booted up, I mean like the on-screen, like your thing that pops up for the navigation and music and all that. Mm-hmm. Had every time the car sped up, every time it decelerated, accelerated, the miles per hour.
That is so interesting.
It had steps that he walked because all your step tracking apps, right? Like apps like Google Fit and things like that are just on your phone. Yeah, that's tracking how many steps you take. And it's not tracking where you're taking the steps necessarily, but at least in this case it wasn't. But it is telling you how many steps you're taking between each time when you have your phone on you. So literally the records in this case were everything, including what Paul ate that night. Just mind-blowing to me through text, because they pull back the text of like his mom saying, because I even now know that Maggie had a pedicure before. She was getting a foot massage before she got home. So they went into such detail that you literally know, and she was, again, this is a callback to the previous episode, but they had a housekeeper maid, however you would like to refer to it. And the Murdaughs are really wealthy, several generations of wealth, lawyers, have a legal firm in South Carolina, just a lot of money so they can afford things like having a maid. And so Maggie basically told Paul, yeah, she made this for you to eat. So there's literally text going back and forth between Maggie and Paul. There's, calls that Alec made that day. There are calls that Paul made that day. They literally have their Snapchats, what time they did Snapchats, what time they did just iMessages or FaceTime. It's crazy how much detail they got off of the phones and the cars in this case.
Technology, man.
Everybody's cars too. Like they got it off Maggie's car too, because she was driving back from her foot massage. So like they have what time she got home because she was in a different car than Alec. So, and Alec, another thing that's important to remember in this, he did work for his law firm, was a lawyer. He got disbarred in this whole thing for a totally different reason, for basically stealing money from his clients, or that's what was alleged. And he got kicked out of his own law firm, basically, his own family's law firm. And so this guy, though, knows his way around the law, is my point, of he knows what's legal and what's illegal. And he knows what can be used in court and what can't be used in court. So keep that in mind along this whole process. This guy knows what he's doing, or at least knows more than an average person would. All right, so let's get into timeline. So what I want to start out with... oh, sorry, did you have something?
No.
Okay, sorry.
I was just clearing my throat.
Gotcha. So the original timeline, this came from back way before where we're even on the Netflix documentary. And there's a 48 Hours in a Netflix documentary and a few other documentaries out there. I would recommend going and watching those because they have a lot of details too. But I think our summary covers most of those details as well. So on Alec's original timeline, he said that he was home and woke up from a nap at 7:31. He said Maggie and Paul was not there. So the case goes way further in depth in terms of tracking his movements, but this was important to note from Paul's story, or from Alec's story. At 8:05, he texts Maggie and Paul saying that he's going to check on his mom and dad. His dad was in bad health. So
and that was at 8:22?
That was at 8:05.
8:05. Okay.
And at 10:20, he says that he gets back home and discovers the scene. Maggie was shot multiple times in the chest and back. Paul was shot in the chest once and in the neck. It says he was shot once in the chest, once in the neck, and once in the head, which I think that is... We'll get into that when we get into the weapons used, but I think there's kind of an explanation for that. So an important note here too, when it comes to, as most of us know, when it comes to crime scenes, the less you touch a crime scene, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So 911 told Alec when he called that he was not supposed to touch the bodies or anything. And he said, well, I already did because I was already checking their pulse, checking to see if they were alive. So he claimed on the 911 call that he had already touched the bodies and that even though they had said, don't do that, it was too late. He had already done it. But that's going to come back important in this case that he said once he called 911 that he had already checked the bodies. So keep that in the back of your mind here.
Okay.
So on the body cam footage even, Alex said that Paul had been receiving threats over the boating accident. So he is already kind of trying to point the investigation in a different way than him, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying, I'm sure that's what it is. He was getting, paraphrasing here, but he was getting threats over the boating accident. Again, boating accident, I would go back to the summary that we did. We're going to do a whole nother deep dive into the boating accident. But basically, summary there is Paul Murdaugh was driving a boat drunk, allegedly. Not allegedly that he was drunk, but he was driving, allegedly that he was the driver of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And he got into a boat accident, which killed Mallory. I'm spacing on her last name. I think I put her name on there. But he killed Mallory, one of their friends, and I apologize that I'm not remembering Mallory's name. We can always put it up on the screen or check the summary too, because I made sure to put her last name in it. But that boating accident was, a lot of people were saying that's Paul's fault. And so, according to Alec, he had been receiving a lot of death threats over it. So that's why that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Go a little further down here. So this was kind of interesting to me too. So Anthony, the girlfriend or the boyfriend of Mallory, Mallory Beach. I got it here in my notes. Mallory Beach.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So Mallory Beach, her boyfriend's name was Anthony, and the police immediately suspected him as one of the suspects because of the boating accident, because of what Alec was saying, because of the fact that he had motive, and the fact that people thought, why wouldn't he blame Paul for his...
Right. I get that, yeah.
Yeah, why wouldn't he blame Paul for killing his girlfriend? But if you watch the documentary, I think Anthony, while he doesn't seem like he really cares much for Paul or will never have the same relationship, which is understandable,
mm-hmm.
I think he also is not the kind of person that's sitting there going, well, I'm going to get vengeance for it.
Right.
He's like, do I think you did something horrible and did something stupid? Yeah. But do I think he deserves to die for it? Not really.
Right.
So I think with what Anthony has been through, and this is just opinion, but I just don't feel like Anthony was in that headspace even during the documentary.
Yeah,
he just didn't seem like it.
I think he wanted her back, but I mean, rightfully so.
I think he would have changed that day if he could have.
Right, absolutely.
Which makes complete sense. Mm-hmm. This was interesting to me, and this is from the doc. So Mallory's dad, his dad was very, very vengeful in his interviews, and he basically, I mean, he was angry, and I get it. He lost his daughter. So the first thing was when they called him, he was surprised. He said to the police, "I'm surprised you didn't contact me sooner."
Yeah.
Like he was like, I was waiting for the call when I heard that Paul died. And he even quoted a line from the Old Testament that said an eye for an eye.
Right.
So that was interesting to me because he's almost like, you talk about motive and you talk about people's body languages. Anthony had motive, and so did Mallory's dad. But then you see their body languages, and Anthony, I'm like, I don't think Anthony wanted anything to do with that. I think he wanted to try to move past it. Mallory's dad, I think that dude was still angry. I don't blame him at all. That doesn't mean he did anything. But if you're looking at the two side by side, to me, I would be more suspicious of Mallory's dad than I would be of Anthony. But given Alec's history, I think I'd be more suspicious over Alec over both of them.
Yeah. With her dad, it almost seemed like when he got that call, he was like, I didn't do it, but I wish I did.
Yeah, you know? Right.
Which I don't blame. And if them two came together and they plotted to kill them and then frame Alec, whew. Like, I ain't even mad about it, really.
Well,
but I don't think they did. I really don't.
There's even one other person too who could have been part of that, and I'm trying to get over to that. I believe here it was. Sorry for that.
That would be a good movie.
Yeah,
that would be a very good movie.
I'm trying to figure out that. I'm sorry, I'm using a different laptop here, so getting to my notes is a little more difficult. See what her name is, because there's 3 M's. So when I do the boat case, that's gonna be fun. There's
Mallory, Morgan, and
if you remember it, you're doing better than me. I will have that in the boat case.
Yeah,
it is another.
And I can put it
M,
on the screen. I don't remember it.
This is actually Morgan. So
Great
Morgan,
name, by the way.
Morgan was asked by law enforcement for a hair sample. So she was and she was friends with Mallory. She also had a really bad relationship with Paul. She was Paul's ex-girlfriend. So they obviously thought she had some motive. And she actually said when they were getting hair samples from her, don't skip looking at Alec. Right. So she was already pointing at Alec too, even when they first, and she, I guess, gave the hair samples and everything, and everything was fine there. So yeah, Anthony, Morgan, and Mallory's dad were all at least contacted by the police as suspects. So they didn't go.
At least they're not just zeroing in on somebody.
Right. They did check.
Yeah.
But they landed on Alec. I have here in my notes that basically the law enforcement told the public not to be worried because it was weird that these 2 murders happened, but law enforcement was almost immediately like, don't worry. Like, there's not
a serial killer.
It's not a serial killer. There's no murderer that's like out here doing things, at random. Like this was a a targeted thing where nobody else in the public needs to worry. We already kind of know who we're looking at.
Right.
So that was interesting to me, though, because that to me was like, they were like, yeah, so we got an idea who this probably was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were just had it narrowed down to the point where they're like, it's just somebody who didn't like Paul.
Right.
But they were pretty sure already. And it was kind of weird for them to just be like, don't worry. Because, you know, if something did happen after, they'd be like, okay, sorry, you actually should have been worrying. My bad.
Right.
So that's weird for me that they came out that early before they even had anybody in custody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're at the point where what Alex gave as his alibi.
Mm.
So Alex said that at 9:15 he was visiting his parents. They should
have camera footage, shouldn't they?
They like at the I want to say farm, but the Murdaugh residence.
Well, that too, but like at the facility his parents are at.
So I don't think they're at a facility. I think they're at their home, like their own home.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think they have like a lot of times you will have, especially when you have money, you'll have somebody that hospice that'll take care of you. So I think that was more of the situation. They don't really go into detail about that, but they did say that he went to their house. So I do think it was kind of an in-home care situation.
Makes sense.
So 9:15 is important because so basically what Alex said he did is he said that he was taking a nap and then went to go visit his parents. He said that he did not go down to the kennel with Paul and Maggie, which the kennel is where both Paul and Maggie were found murdered. This piece of evidence is really important, though, because at 8:44, Paul had actually made a video where he was you could hear Alex's voice. So
what was he making a video about?
The dog. He was showing one of the dogs at the kennel and showing the dog's tail for some reason. I actually saw the video. I didn't hear the sounds, but I saw the video and. You know, he was just showing his dog's tail, kind of wagging his tail, petting the dog, things like that. So it was something about the dog. And I don't think Alec knew that he was making that video. And I think that, honestly, ended up being really important in this case, based on listening to the jurors and what their thoughts were. Because it kind of screws up Alec's entire timeline. Because according to Alec, he wasn't there that whole time. Alec left to go visit his parents, according to him, before that. Well, not before the video, but like he was napping and then he got up and left to go see his parents, according to Alec. He never went back down to the kennels. That video does place that he was down back at the kennels at 8:44. So,
which makes that timeline super tight.
It does, yeah. Shortly after the murders. I do need to say this first here. So this to me is really interesting, and we're going to get into more details later. But Paul was shot with a shotgun. The ballistics weren't able to, at least at the time, and I think still on the shotgun, weren't able to trace it down to a specific shotgun, like a specific model or anything like that. But it also said in the documentaries that that's hard to do with a shotgun. I'm guessing most of the ammunition and casings and stuff are pretty much the same. I'm not really that into that kind of stuff, so I don't know a ton about it. I know a little bit about it, but what Maggie was shot with was a completely different gun. It was a AR-15 style rifle that used Blackout 300 ammunition, is what it said, which is very specific. And also the Murdaughs had a gun like that on their property, which was not there when the police were coming and looking for, they live out in the country, so they got a bunch of different rifles, guns, things like that. They're hunters, all that. So the police, when they were going and looking through guns and stuff like that, they looked for that particular gun and didn't find it. The shotgun was kind of a different story, I think, because it could have been any of the shotguns at that point. So it's kind of hard for them to get any evidence off of Paul's murder weapon.
I wonder why he shot them with 2 different guns.
That is, I'm going to get into that a little later, but that is one of my concerns too.
Okay.
That is one of my concerns with this case too, because it seems very odd to me that because you think of one person, you're going to think of the same weapon, right? And they're not that far away from each other. So I saw the body cam footage, and they I'm thankful they did this, but they blurred out the bodies of Maggie and Paul, but you could see where they were, right? It's not like Maggie did. I mean, I guess there could have been time differences. Maggie could have been somewhere else, and then she could have came closer to where Paul was, trying to figure out what happened. But I mean, I don't see any way that, and they think that Paul was murdered first. So I don't see any way that Maggie didn't
run away.
I mean, it's her son, so maybe she was running to him, like, oh no, I gotta try to save him. But then she was shot in the back, so it could have been that, she was going to check on Paul, but then she realized the shooter was still there. But still, why would you switch guns? Like, the 2-gun thing is weird to me. Because
maybe he did that to make it seem like there was 2 shooters.
It could. I mean, he's a lawyer, so he knows that could be weird in terms of because that was what the defense pushed for a lot in this case, was 2 shooters, right? Because 2 different guns.
Right.
So that's, and on the case side of things, like I said, they never recovered that AR-15 style, that very specific weapon. They never recovered it. So they don't actually literally have the smoking gun in this case. So usually that's an easy conviction when you have the smoking gun. Right. But when you don't have the smoking gun, sometimes it's kind of hard to get a conviction. So we'll see where they go with that coming up here soon. So shortly after all this, Alec actually got kicked out of his law firm because his law firm discovered that he had been taking money from his clients, and a lot of money at that.
Shortly after the murders.
After the murders, yes. And then basically, Sarah's going to do a deep dive on this, but one of the cases is and we'll get more into this as the case goes, but Gloria was the name of the housekeeper, and she actually died on their property, and family got no money from it, but Alec did. So that's going to be another deep dive down the road. Look forward to that, but it's important to know that that's one of those that he was stealing money from, was Gloria's family. So that's one of the reasons he got kicked out, was actually a different murder. Right? So crazy enough, a day later after he got kicked out of the law firm, he called 911 and said that he'd been shot on the side of the road. And more on this from the summary side of things. I went over this in the summary there too. This is important to note because it kind of establishes his frame of mind. So Curtis Smith did an interview on 48 Hours about this. Curtis Smith calls himself a handyman. Other people had called him Alex drug dealer. So, and I guess he's also a distant cousin of Alec. Yeah, right? So there's kind of 2 stories here, and this is a whole nother ongoing case. So we're probably going to hear more details about this later. But Curtis basically said, well, I was called by Alec to help him fix a flat tire. So that's why Curtis said he was out there. He came out there, said Alex had a gun, and told Curtis to shoot him. Right? So Alex later came out and said, yeah, I wanted him to do that for insurance money. Right, so one of the charges against him, and both of them, is insurance fraud or conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. And he wanted to give his other son, Buster, the money from insurance. He claims that he was just in such a bad state after Paul and Maggie. Plus, he had been dealing with drug addiction. That was his way out. Was he was just going to do that and leave the money for Buster?
Or was he trying to make it look like someone attacked him too?
Mm-hmm.
So it made it look like, oh, I'm this innocent victim. See?
And the Netflix documentary kind of ties into that too, because they think maybe he was trying to also make it look like this person who did this might have been the one who did it to Paul and Maggie.
Right.
Which
was he trying to frame
Curtis,
or was he thinking, Curtis, you run and I'll just what a loser. What a loser he is.
My only thought with this is he's just trying to cause confusion.
Right.
Like he's trying to make this case as confusing as possible in order to make it harder to get convicted.
Yeah.
But he also says, like, he at the time was going through his issues with drugs. We'll get into that later, how many drugs he was doing, but he may not have been in a good mental state at that point. Probably wasn't, especially if he did actually kill his wife and son. You can't be in a good mental state and do that.
Right.
So we're talking about a person that we probably can't understand how their mind's working right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he didn't do it, you imagine the amount of grief he's going through and the fact that he just lost his job, basically, his family's lifetime work. Mm-hmm. Even if he didn't do it, he's going to be in a bad state of mind.
Right.
So basically, Curtis's version of events was that he showed up. Alex asked him to shoot him. Curtis said no. Curtis was going to leave, but eventually got into an altercation, a physical altercation with Alec, and tried to take the gun, tried to disarm him. I went into this in the summary, but just because I think it's relevant to this case here, Alec got shot in the back of the head, barely. It sounded kind of like it grazed him. Mm-hmm. And they said the reason that happened, or at least according to Curtis, was because he was trying to wrestle the gun away from him and it went off. Mm-hmm. Curtis said he took the gun and he left.
Does the evidence match that?
So that's what's weird, is this case does not necessarily include that case.
Okay.
So
we don't know yet.
Don't know until they actually go over Curtis and Alec's case. Alec is going to have so many cases that this is probably just, we're probably going to keep like a slow trickle of, oh, this is what happened that time.
Oh Lord.
Because he's also being sued. Actually, I don't remember if it's, I feel like he got named on the suit as far as the boating accident too.
Oh, I'm sure.
So as kind of a party that, had negligence there. Mm-hmm. So there's just going to be, and I know Paul was, but Paul never stood trial because he was murdered here. Mm-hmm. So there's more to come out about each of these murders, or each of these incidents even.
Okay.
Because almost every incident has a new case tied to it. Like the financial side of things has a case tied to it. Mm-hmm. So Alec is going to spend more time in court than probably anywhere else for the next...
And then in jail.
Yeah, right.
Oh, hate him.
I don't know. I don't see a world where he navigates all of this and gets out free on all of these charges.
Right. He'll be down for something.
He's going to go to jail for something. It's just how long, and can he get parole?
And he's probably going to appeal this.
Yes.
So that's a whole nother...
We'll get there, but...
Okay, sorry.
No, you're okay. You're good. I'm just saying...
Keep jumping ahead.
You're all right. We'll get there, though. Because that actually is in my notes, too.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, so after the shooting, let's get down here. So July 14th, 2022, so about a year after the murders of Paul and Maggie, Alex was charged with murdering Maggie and Paul. If convicted, he would face a life sentence. So it took a year, but you got to also keep in mind, you got to build a case against somebody.
They were interviewing all those people. They were going through the evidence.
Yeah, and you can't charge somebody, the whole double jeopardy thing, basically. You can't charge somebody with a weak case and then they just get off. And then it's like, well, we can't try him again.
Yeah.
So while it's terrible that if he is the one who did it, that he's been free for a year, you also want to really actually get him if he did it.
Right.
So it's tough, but thankfully nothing else happened outside of the carjacking incident where nobody else got hurt.
Carjacking? You mean the car pulled over?
Yeah, I said carjacking. I meant
I just want to make sure.
No, you're right. You're right. Flat tire incident, I should say.
I was like, was there another incident?
No.
Hopefully not.
No.
He carjacked.
It would not surprise me.
Right.
In this
I'd
case.
be like, all right.
So this was interesting to me. The start of the case. So I'm onto my case notes now here. The start of the case, Alec's attorney thought there was just no grounds for this really, and they pushed for the phrasing was like a speedy trial, but like a fast trial, which to me basically sounded like they were pushing for this to basically be dismissed because they didn't think the evidence against Alec was strong enough to even for this go to a full case. Wow. So I don't know if the defense was just that confident or if the defense was like, hey, if we can get this as a speedy trial, maybe like you got a better chance of it just getting dismissed and then we just don't, go through any of this.
Well, if you think about all that the defense had, they had the two-gun theory.
Right.
Then you look at the prosecution, you have all of that tech evidence that's going to take a while to go through. So if they're like, we're stacked up on that side, we need to get this done fast.
Right.
And
not let them
process all that.
Well, yeah. And also on top of that, at the time, Alec had his alibi, right? So he's like, I have an alibi. There's a two-gun theory.
I'm good.
Like, I wasn't even there. Like, this should just be open and shut. Just push through it and move on.
And he probably would have got off on that.
But yeah, if
the timeline wouldn't have been messed up.
Again, the big key piece of evidence was Paul's video. Paul's video at the dog kennels with Alec's voice placed him there. And I should have noted this earlier as part of the timeline. It was said by the coroners, and it's important to note that they can't say like to the minute when somebody died, but it was thought that they passed away at 9:00, that they were shot at about 9:00. So Paul's video at 8:44, and then that happened to them at 9:00. It's really tight window. I'm not saying 15 minutes, 16 minutes. He could leave in that time, but the problem was he already said that he wasn't even there. So he had to change his story, which we're going to hear here soon.
Right. Do we know what he was saying on that video?
He was talking to one of the other dogs.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't anything like they weren't fighting or...
Yeah, it was. So I heard this from one of the jurors. He was talking to one of the other dogs and trying to get the dog to come here. Like he grabbed something or something like that. Like it had it almost sounded like he had like one of the dogs had some kind of an animal in his mouth from what the juror was saying. He was like trying to get it from the dog.
Okay.
So
weird. What? I don't get.
I don't think he knew.
I'm going to let you talk because I don't get
I'm going to let you finish.
What all this happened. What happened here?
Yeah. And so it was a pretty normal seeming video.
Yeah.
I just don't think, Alec didn't know that Paul was doing a video of his dog's tail, right?
Right, yeah.
And so how was he supposed to know his voice was caught on something? It does seem weird that things were seemingly perfectly normal at that point.
Right. And then
15 minutes later, everything changed.
Right.
So, we'll get into some motives here, but in my opinion, the motive was kind of weak. But we'll get there on those as well. So, according, that was another thing with the speedy trial, as they said, what's the motive, right? They said he has no motive for doing it, right? Because I guess he didn't have insurance taken out on them, so he wasn't going to benefit insurance wise. So his defense tried to be like, there's no motive, like it's not a money thing. That's with how they were painting it. They're like, it's not a money thing. He has no motive. Two-shooter theory. Like the defense was trying to avoid this big trial, but the judge said no.
Right. Because my thought was like maybe it was just them two, like Alec and his son out at the dog pen, and then like he shot him for some reason,
like
and then the mom,
or something?
or maybe like on purpose, and then the mom came out because she heard the gunshots. But then I'm like, would she? Because it's like they probably hear gunshots a lot out there.
She'd have to be close though, because so the kennels are a long way from the house, which is going to be important too later. But the kennel, it's not like the kennels are right next to the house, right? So the mom had to be at the kennels too. So like it's not. She couldn't have
come. Why they were all out there?
I think just to, I mean, you got all those dogs just to feed them and take care of them, and I don't know what Paul was looking at with the tail. I don't know if he thought like something, I don't know, like somehow the dog got hurt, or I don't know what the deal was with that. I don't have hunting dogs, so I don't really, I don't know that part.
It's crazy that it all went awry so fast.
It is, yeah, in just such a short time. Everybody's life kind of changed.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. I've been kind of, feel like I've been kind of talking over you and you haven't gotten a chance to
no, it's okay. I'm just baffled.
Yeah. So the judge said no. Like I said, he said we're going to a full trial. So we get into some of the testimonies now, and Alec actually took the stand, and so he was a lawyer. I'm sure he felt like I'm comfortable taking the stand. A lot of legal experts were advising against it at the time. Not saying his defense was, but like, you know, legal experts were going on, other lawyers were going on TV saying, I wouldn't put him on the stand. I don't think that's a good idea. Just because I think they said that basically there's less benefit to it than there would be harm at that point in the case. So a lot of them, as the trial were going, was saying, don't put him up on the stand, even if he's experienced. But he did it anyways. And I don't know if I'm assuming that was his call. Like he was like, I want to do it. So I think it would have to be his call.
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier the drug part of things. This was kind of mind blowing, but it was asked if he was taking about 60 pills a day. And he said on average, yeah, probably about 60 pills a day. Some days more, some days less. So there's days where he was taking more than 60 pills a day. He was addicted, pretty heavily addicted.
What was he addicted to? I said pills, but
I think I had it in my notes, but I'm trying to remember the exact name of this type of drug. What's the you might have to help me here because I'm spacing on it. It would be kind of the like the hydrocodone, like the ones that bring you down, like that's usually used for painkillers, things like that.
Oxycodone?
Yeah, like the oxycodone, oxycontin.
I know nothing about all this stuff.
Yeah, I know very little, but there's a name for it. I'm spacing on the name for it, but basically that class of drugs that are basically used in painkillers, things like that.
Okay.
I'll remember it tonight when I'm sleeping, probably.
We'll put it below.
Oh, we can put it below. Yeah, I'm gonna end up making Sarah edit a lot on this, apparently.
That's okay.
So he was very heavily addicted to medicines and painkillers, and that's going to be very important coming up here as well. So he did actually admit on stand that he had been taking money from his clients.
Okay.
So he did actually say, yes, I was doing that. Yes, I was lying about it. Yes, it's bad, but it doesn't make me a murderer.
Mm.
So I don't know if that evidence will be able to be used against him in the financial cases.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But he did admit to it while he was on stand. So at the bare minimum here, if you take what we know to be true of Alec, that's not good of a human being.
Right.
Like, he was taking money. We now know that for sure, that he was taking money from clients, from vulnerable clients.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, that's not great. Even if it turns out he didn't do this,
He's still
it's still not great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did admit that. I don't know if that'll be able to be used in the financial crime cases, but we'll find that out more. I had it in my notes here, the amount of money that Gloria's attorneys were saying that he took based on an insurance policy. And he had taken out a $4.3 million insurance policy on a commercial insurance policy on that farm before Gloria, like recently before Gloria died. And he collected that, and the family didn't see any of it.
Convenient.
So when we're talking about financial crimes like that, we're not talking about like he's taking $20 here and there. Like, he's taking big money from people who
Need it.
legitimately, like, they lost a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty bad what he was doing. So this was interesting too. So they found on his clothing, there was forensic evidence of high velocity, what they thought was high velocity blood splatters.
Mm-hmm.
It was later determined that was not. It was determined by the defense and one of their forensics experts that it was not human blood. So it kind of sounds like that part fell apart. The part with the blood splatters, mm-hmm. that basically fell apart. So one of the prosecution's big things was like, okay, we had these blood splatters on his shirt, and then it turned out that's not what it was. They never identified what it was. It just said not human blood.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, you're thinking of guns that are pretty far away from someone.
One of them, yes. The AR-15 was a distance kind of thing. The shotgun, though, and that's actually what one of the forensics experts on the defense side of things said. He said, if somebody used a shotgun to kill Paul as close proximity as it was from the crime scene.
Okay.
And this is very graphic, but it almost sounded like they made it a trigger warning.
Yes.
They almost made it sound like Paul's head basically exploded.
Yeah, I mean, a shotgun does damage.
Right, and they're like, it would have been. There would have been brain matter.
That's a big bullet. Yeah. So it's going to cause a lot more.
When it spreads out, too.
Yes.
And there would have been skull fragments. The way the defense forensic expert painted it was that there's no way that you don't A, get covered, mm-hmm. and B, that you don't even get damage from like the skull fragments.
The blowback.
Yeah.
Basically.
So that's what their defense was arguing, was they're like, it couldn't have been two people, because like one person does that it's going to take them time to even, because they were trying to say like it would have been in his eyes and everything, like the person who was shooting.
I think that's a little much.
I think
they're really stretching. I think
they're reaching a lot. Yeah.
But
they
he did. I mean,
a lot.
He could have gotten blood on him from that or from touching them.
Interestingly enough, they also were based on the bullet trajectory. They were trying to say that the person who shot Paul, based on the trajectory, would have been about 5'4".
Mm-hmm.
Well, the prosecution had a forensic expert that's like, how can you say 5'4". Like,
Was he 5'4"?
no, he was actually tall. He was like 6'4". So it's like they're trying. The defense was trying to say that he is the person that shot is short and he's tall, right? So they're trying to be like he couldn't even done. He's not even the right height, right?
Could Maggie have shot him?
I mean, potentially. I don't know how tall Maggie was, but there's
I don't know
definitely
why.
no motive in there because the text going back and
know.
the text going back and forth between Maggie and Paul were friendly. So I mean,
Right.
like,
I just want to know how all of this is possible.
right. I would love to know too. But the prosecution, their forensics expert was like, how can you tell? Like, you don't know if they were holding it at their hip. You don't know if they were holding it up to their shoulder. You don't know. You don't even know how they were carrying the shotgun. So how are you going to say they're 5'4"? So to kind of sum it up, you basically have the defense disprove that there was blood on Alex's shirt, which was a big thing. But the prosecution basically said you can't say that it wasn't Alex shooting based on his height. And you also can't prove that there wasn't one person using two different guns. Okay. So that to me, I said we get back to the two-gun theory. This to me, the two-gun theory is my reasonable doubt in the case. That we'll talk about it at the end, what we think.
Right.
But man, that's weird to me too. Why? Why would you use two guns? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me unless he just carried two because he was
Did he run out of bullets? I mean, he shot the boy 3 times.
Yeah, it's possible.
Maybe he had to pick up another gun.
So when I was going to say the shot 3 times where it said it was in chest, neck, things like that, I think I kind of wonder if that's not like spray from the one shot. But it did sound like he was probably shot at least twice. And the shotguns, you don't have a lot of ammo in them. So it's possible. It is very possible. And also, when you talk about, I know very little about guns, but I do know this. Shotguns are usually very short range, but AR-15 style weapons they're a rifle, so they're meant for a longer range.
Right.
So maybe he was shooting Paul and then Maggie was at a distance. And so he was like, well, I need a different gun.
But why would he have 2 guns on him?
That's what, unless he planned for it. Or unless he was trying to maybe confuse people. I mean, I'm struggling with the two-gun theory. I'm almost having to try to make it fit.
Right.
So that's the part, that two-gun theory is the part that actually gives me reasonable doubt. Like, I'm coming up with all these, I mean, is it possible? Yes. Likely? Not really, I guess, but yeah, it's possible. So the two-gun theory gives me still to this day gives me some doubt in this case. That one might keep me up at night for a while. So
make it make sense.
Right. So get back down here further on my notes.
And I think if Maggie shot her son, I think Alec would say it. I think he would try to use that as she shot him, so I had to shoot. Like he's just that kind of meaner who would say that.
Yeah, and I think they would have found some residue on Maggie, like gun residue, things like that.
That's true.
So I think maybe he was just like, well, I can't claim that if she didn't do it. So maybe that does rule that out.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just don't see any reason there are all kinds of reasons for Alec to kill Maggie, which we're going to get into here in a little bit, but I don't really know of any reasons for him to kill Paul, unless it was just the Paul hurting the family name, or I don't know. I don't have a lot of motive on the Paul thing, and that's another reasonable doubt side of things.
Because they say Paul was killed first,
right? So it was almost like, if anything, if only one was the target, it was like Paul is the target. Maybe he thought that he could use the boating accident as a motive for somebody else having done it. And so that's why, I don't know. It just, they don't click for me there. Something's off.
Let's keep going.
let's get further.
Whew.
So, here's where things get interesting, and I have a screenshot for you actually from the case.
Okay.
That for our Spotify listeners, I apologize. I will try to explain it, but for the YouTube listeners, I'll have you put this screenshot up. But it basically shows his GPS. As I mentioned, there's a ton of GPS evidence and where Maggie's phone was found. And shocker, Maggie's phone was found off of the property, but on Alex Drive out of the property, where he went on his route to go visit his parents.
Okay.
Both phones basically stopped doing anything after like 8:50. So they literally had, every time they unlocked the phone, every text message, everything they received, every time even the phone changed orientation from like vertical to horizontal.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they had like every detail about the phones.
Okay.
And they basically, both phones went inactive at about 8:50.
So this is what I don't get. He did go, like, they have proof that he went to visit his parents.
Yes.
Okay.
GPS proof.
At 9.
At like 9:15, I think, is when they said. That's when he left. It was about 9:15.
And they were shot at 9. So
that's what they're saying, yes, is that they were shot at 9. Again, that's probably got a little, could be 8:55, could be 9:05. It's probably got a little wiggle room there, but that's when they're claiming they were shot.
Okay. And did he admit that he went later than what he said? That's
where Alex's story changed, was Paul's video, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, Alex like, I can't say anymore that I was at the parents the whole time because video proves I'm not.
Right. So
Alec changed the whole story and claimed that, well, I was not in my right mind because of my drug addiction. I was scared. I was scared that they were going to accuse me of this. He said that he was there at the kennels, but went back up to the house to go see his parents and left at about 9:15, which is when the GPS shows that he actually left. So he would have more than likely been there when it happened. Mm-hmm. And the house is far away from the kennels, but I think you can still hear a gun.
That he stopped at 8:50.
At 8:50, yeah.
That makes me think that they were killed around 8:50.
That's kind of what I would think.
Think about how much you're moving your phone.
Right.
How much, even if it's in your pocket, like how much you're just
steps
using the flashlight to get back to the house. Like you would be doing something.
I know. I agree. Yeah. And so I really believe that based on that, and the jurors came out and said that this phone evidence was a huge part of the case.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it pretty much places him at least at the house. But Alex said that he left his phone. When he was down there with them at the kennels, he left his phone in the house. So Alex's phone was at the house the whole time. They couldn't trace his phone location, calls, things like that, because it was sitting at the house.
Did he take it when he left with his parents?
Yes. But that whole time it was sitting in the house when the murders would have allegedly happened.
Right.
Which he claims he took a golf cart back from the kennels to the house while Paul and Maggie were still alive. He went back to the house, got ready, left to go see his parents. That's his new changed story. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, based on the timeline, he would have been going back to, according to Alex now, he would have been going back to the house and getting ready. Meanwhile, Maggie and Paul are getting shot, but he hadn't left yet. So we're saying somehow he didn't hear them get shot. And this is not like, when you look at the property, it's, like there are trees, but I didn't think there's a lot of trees between the kennel and the house. Mm-hmm. It's not like the gunshot would have been muffled, and it's a shotgun. They're loud.
Yeah.
So like, I don't see, and like you said, he is out in the country, so maybe there are other hunters around. Maybe you just thought it was, you could say that maybe he thought it was a hunting.
If there's an animal going after their animals, maybe he thought, oh, my son got it.
Like, oh, something's attacking because I think they had some kind of livestock like chicken and stuff like that. So maybe he thought something was attacking. I mean, we're trying to make something fit
it work,
again, but I mean, there are outs there, but
does he even know time being taken that much drugs?
Right?
Like, how does he know? Oh, yes, I left at 9, whatever.
But they said he was high functioning.
Well, I mean, he'd probably been on him for a long time.
Right. He'd been on him for a long time. He had a huge tolerance of them, and he had been able to be a lawyer while taking that many.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
I mean, because, like, he didn't have his phone on him, so he's not checking the time.
Right.
How does he know when he did all this stuff?
Yeah, and the fact that he changed the story, too, is huge, because he originally said he wasn't even there.
Right.
But then he changed it, saying, well, I lied because I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. We've also established that he wasn't a great person, so the whole lying thing is kind of...
par for the course.
Yeah, it kind of fits there a little bit.
Yeah.
Good, yeah. So, this was something that bothered me, and this is going to make you kind of go,
Okay.
So, the evidence that they were using in the timeline included cell phone calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, throughout the day, Alec had been making a lot of cell phone calls, been getting a lot of cell phone calls, things like that. They used polls off of the phones to pull like what activity had been happening.
Mm-hmm.
But then they also were able to get the Verizon records.
Okay.
Shocker, Alex was missing a lot of calls on his phone.
Okay.
But Verizon had them. So Alex had possibly deleted. I don't want to say for sure, but what else deletes calls off of your phone?
He deleted them.
So, and there was a ton of calls deleted off of his phone.
From who?
Well, it was kind of from everybody, like him calling a friend, like just to talk about general things.
Why would he delete them?
Him calling Paul earlier in the day.
Uh-huh.
He called Maggie. He texted Maggie. A lot of that stuff was deleted, but pulled back from Verizon. It may kind of fit his position that, I was paranoid. But, and this is a funny thing too to me. Not funny, none of this is funny, but...
ironic, I guess.
Ironic, yeah. He was literally, they show on the body cam footage, he was talking to a police officer, right? Well, the police officers who got on the scene. And then when they were checking out the scene, you see him like walk away with the cell phone at his face, literally calling people. Like he had they didn't just take his cell phone right away.
Right.
You literally saw him walk off in the distance with his cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been deleting them right then, for all we know.
He could have been.
Because he was definitely on his cell phone when he called, like when the police arrived.
He could have been calling his family saying, come bail me out of this.
There were actual texts.
Because that's what they did with the boat accident.
Right. And there was actual text on there like saying, hey, I need you to get here at emergency.
Yeah.
Like, and this was after. This was after the 911, after all that.
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually talking to people too.
Mm-hmm.
But he very easily could have been. I mean, if you watch the body cam footage, there was plenty of time where nobody was looking at him. Right. He had his phone.
Yeah.
He could have been deleting stuff.
Yeah.
Was it paranoia from, the drugs and worrying about getting caught with the cops and stuff? Possibly. Mm-hmm. But it's not a good look.
Your family, though.
Yeah, it's not a good look. You're more worried about you than... And a lot of people who saw the body cam footage thought that he didn't act right. Mm-hmm. I take kind of... I don't like those takes.
Right. I would be in shock.
Yeah, and so, full transparency, right? Like, I take medicine, I take Lexapro, things like that. Mm-hmm. I think I would be in shock, but I don't know what the Lexapro would do. I don't know if it would make me act weird, mm-hmm. right? Like, I don't know if having an antidepressant and then having a shocking event like that happen, I don't know what that would do to me.
Right.
So I really can't tell you what would happen with him being on 60 pills a day and then having something happen. Like, I think people analyzing his behavior during that, is kind of hard to do, especially when you factor in drugs are involved. You just don't know how somebody's going to react anyways, let alone with drugs in their system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that kind of bothered me. I don't have a lot about the comments on this was just YouTube comments on that body cam footage. It's out there. You guys can go watch it, if you want to, but I don't have a lot of comments on his body language because I don't like people going off of that. And I think a lot of people have kind of called that a junk science too.
Right.
Where like it's body
body analysis.
Body language analysis, is not fully fleshed out, fully proven yet.
Right.
Not saying it won't be someday, but I don't think it's there yet.
Right.
So, another interesting part to this, and this was really a big piece of evidence, and a lot of it came from the same guy testifying from they call it SLED. I forgot what it was actually stood for.
Carolina.
Legal enforcement. I don't know, something like that. But it's part of part of the police department, part of the investigative team.
That came up in my case too.
I can't remember exactly, but he was the one who compiled all this, the whole timeline, the routes he drove, what speeds he was going, all of that. He had said, based on phone records, that, and this was insanely interesting to me, with calling 911, it placed him at the kennels and calling 911 20 seconds after he got to the kennels. But he claimed on the 911 call that he had already checked Paul and Maggie's pulse.
Mm-hmm.
So he called 911 and had just arrived at the kennels for 20 seconds and seemingly just got out of the car, ran, checked Paul and Maggie's pulse in those 20 seconds while he was calling 911. That's hard to, and they weren't right next to each other.
Right.
They were two different places.
Yeah.
So how did he go check their pulses in 20 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Yeah, that's a lot.
And also, when he called 911, so from the sounds of it, according to this
how did he even know they were still down there?
So when he got home, he went to the house first. They weren't at the house.
But you said he got out of the car and in 20 minutes.
In 20 seconds.
20 seconds, went down to the kennels.
No, so he that's my bad on explaining.
Oh, it's
this.
okay.
I can picture it in my head, but I'm having trouble getting it out. Right. But he got back from his parents, went to the house. Nobody was at the house. Drove to the kennels, called 911 within 20 seconds of having got to the kennels.
Gotcha.
Claimed to have checked Paul and Maggie's pulse. Then went back to the house while, I guess, being on the phone with 911, saying he was going back to the house to get a gun, thinking maybe the killer's still there. Now, he didn't say that part, but I'm assuming that's why he went back. Mm-hmm. But he went back while on the phone with 911 and then went back out to kennels before the police arrived.
Was he saying that he was doing all this?
It sounded like he was. I didn't think he said that, but they said on one of the testimonies I heard that he was saying he was going back to get a gun because and they did have a gun on the body cam footage that they took from him. Mm-hmm. And it does this one kind of makes sense to me. If you think somebody shot your family and you think they could still be out there, you want to protect yourself too. Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of get it, but it's still weird. Still a little weird. I mean, I don't know. When they did the body cam footage, he didn't know they passed away, which was weird because he checked their pulse and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he's sitting there going, "Are they dead?" And then they covered him up, and he's like, "Oh God, they're covering him up." And I don't know. I mean, you're in a state of shock, so it's possible he just didn't want to believe it, things like that. But it was a weird series of events there. The big piece of evidence was the 20-second gap there.
Yeah.
That was kind of a big sticking point for the prosecution that they held on to. So we already mentioned about their phones last being active. So at 8:50 for the last time, that was this guy from SLED that covered all of that information. He was the one who pointed out that was the last time they had read text, the last time they had, sent any text or viewed anything that they received on their phone was around 8:50.
Okay.
So he also said, and the defense objected to this, but it was overruled. Basically, they said that they pulled older text messages between Paul and Alec, and the defense didn't think it was relevant to this case, but the prosecution did, and the judge allowed it. But on May 6th, and so remember this happened in June, I believe. So in May, about a month before, Paul had texted Alex saying that Maggie had found drugs in his laptop bag.
Okay.
Had found bags of drugs in his laptop bag, and there was Google search history from the computer that the defense also objected to, saying it wasn't relevant, of Maggie looking up the types of pills that were in his bag. That was like, what is this green pill that says, I think she said it was like P30. Like, what is this green pill that says P30 on it? Like, she was trying to figure out what the drugs were.
Okay.
And they talked a lot about the fact that Alec, they knew he had an addiction and they wanted him to go to rehab. They wanted him to get help. So a lot of that was, I think, to frame a motive, was to be like, Paul or Alec didn't like the fact that Paul and Maggie knew about his addiction and kept giving him a hard time about finding pills and things like that. So that's where the prosecution, that's their motive. I think it's a little weak as far as a motive goes, but it could be a motive, because I know that, you try to take drugs from a drug addict, it doesn't work. Right. So it's possible. It's possible that could be related, but that was important because that's kind of where they're trying to establish their motive from that. Okay. So I had Alex's new timeline, but really we already kind of went over Alex's new timeline. Was that he basically said that he was taking that he was not taking the nap. They went and checked the animals and then went to his parents. So basically he was at the kennel with Paul and them. He admitted to being there during the video, pretty much had to, but then had still left when the murder had happened, according to him.
Right.
And then, so that's actually the last of my notes of the case part here. What we can do here is we'll do the verdict.
Okay.
A random comment here. You guys ready for this? I told you about this one already, so you already know. OJ weighed in. So we've been pretty reading my notes this whole time, so let's give you a little humor. OJ weighed in on a murder case. He said in a small video, he said, do I think that he probably did it? Yes. He said, I'm no expert, but do I think he did it? Probably yes, but probably is still reasonable doubt.
He has some nerve. He really does.
Come on, man. Like, just stay out of it.
Just disappear.
Just like do something different. Don't be talking about cases involving people's wives getting murdered. Like,
He's no expert.
You were in a case where your wife got murdered.
Yeah.
You should never comment on other cases where someone's wife got murdered. Just don't. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure he wants the attention. I'm sure he wants the views, but man, come on.
Yeah, don't.
Don't, OJ. Don't do it. So that's your
Humor for
your
that.
one humorous part of this whole story.
Gosh.
So the verdict. Alex Murdaugh was convicted and proven, or was, how do I want to say that? He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. So the jury, a lot of the jurors have talked after this, and they have said that the big pieces of evidence were really that kept coming up with almost every juror. Paul's cell phone video and Alec changing his story was the biggest reason they convicted him. Excuse me. There was also a lot of people that said Alex throughout the case, they kind of said that it seemed like he was. There's a couple things like people were bothered by him basically. So there are certain things that he just didn't remember with a whole lot of detail. Like, well, what was the last thing that you said to Maggie before you left the kennels? So that would have been the last thing he said to Maggie ever.
Right.
I don't remember. I'd probably say something like. So he didn't remember his last words to Maggie. And people are sitting here going, but yet there's certain things that, and one of the jurors said, like, he would remember things that I would not have remembered the next day.
Right.
Like just little details that I wouldn't have remembered about my daily life the next day. But he also couldn't remember things that I would have remembered for the next 10 years. And so that was one of the jurors said that that was concerning about him. A lot of it too was like it wasn't convincing, again, like body language stuff, but it wasn't convincing that he was really, I guess he would kind of turn it on and off as far as being upset and then being, I'm the lawyer, like go back and forth. So, but almost all the jurors I've seen pointed to Paul's video as the biggest piece of evidence that changed the case.
Right.
So, before I ask for your thoughts, because that's what I was getting ready to do, Alex, his attorneys are already appealing.
Oh, I'm sure.
So when you said that about appealing, I'm like, I haven't said he was convicted yet, but he's already convicted and appealing.
Yeah.
So we're not done with this case, I'm sure, for the next several years. There's going to be appeals. There's possibly going to be new cases, higher court cases where they go up to the next level. We are probably not done with it, especially when you think of the fact that he is an attorney. So you talk about someone who goes to prison and researches their case, like a lot of prisoners do.
Yeah.
He's literally an attorney. He could represent himself in prison.
Did he represent himself?
He didn't.
Okay.
But did
he want to? I'm sure he did.
Well, maybe, but I don't think I hadn't heard anything about him wanting to represent himself, but
he sounds like a Ted Bundy type of person.
I do think he wanted to take the stand.
Yeah.
They did say even when he was being sentenced and he got to say his piece that he still claimed he was innocent. He didn't really show any remorse because he's like, I'm innocent.
Right.
And was basically kind of like, I was sad that it happened. When you mentioned Ted Bundy, I kind of think of, Ted Bundy was like wanting to represent himself and stuff like that, but I felt like Ted Bundy had kind of an ego in that way.
Right.
I don't know if I would call this an ego that I think Alec had. I think he had an above the law kind of personality. Like, I'm a lawyer, therefore you can't get me.
Yeah.
That was ego. But I don't think it was like ego as in, look at what I did.
Well, maybe he's
like
trying
some
to
other serial killers did.
Not that way, because
it's possible.
I mean, he had not only law on his side, but he had money. He had that family. He came from old money. Like,
right.
I'm sure he's a cocky.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So,
and you think of what lawyers do. They literally they have so much time in the courtroom that I'm sure that he can kind of control his emotions. Because I was even listening to the prosecutor, when the prosecutor really wanted to drive home a point, like, so you're telling me that Alex slowed down at about the point where Maggie's cell phone was found the night, the night after the murders.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me he slowed down there? Like you could hear the lawyer get like audibly louder,
Mm-hmm.
and really trying to drive home certain points. And I'm like, that's what lawyers do.
Right.
Like what he is doing on the stand is what he did as an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows a lot of those tricks.
Right.
And that they use that against him too. They're like, he made cell phone calls on his trip between his parents, like when the murders had already happened. He made calls, and they try to say, well, he's making calls because he knows the legal system. Like he wants references of, I was on the phone here at this time. So you can tell certain things he wanted references of almost, and certain ones he didn't.
Yeah.
So I really think he tried to messy up the crime scene, I feel like.
Yeah.
But
which could be why the two-gun theory happened.
Right.
Is him just trying to make it look like there was two people.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you think about it, somebody who has knowledge, way more knowledge than we do of the legal system, they probably know that a messy case is harder for somebody to get convicted on.
Right. So it makes me think he'd planned it out, though. Because a crime of, like, passion, a crime of in the moment doesn't happen. You plan things later. You try to cover up later. He was already thinking, I need to use two guns. I need to call people. I need to do this stuff.
Well, and some of the legal experts say that his time that between when the phone stopped working, which was the 8:50, and when he left, which was like, I think I said 9:15. It might have actually been like more close to like 9:06, 9:10, somewhere in there. So it might have been a little closer, but it was still enough time that he drove back to the house, got his phone, and he could have cleaned up then. That's a lot of legal experts were saying that's probably what the prosecution was going to go after, is he had time to literally go clean up after all this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it may have been planned out that way. Like,
did he clean up before he went to go visit his parents, though?
There's no proof that he did clean up. It's just kind of a theory, I guess.
But that was the time you were talking about.
That kind of gap between the 8:50 and when he actually left.
Yeah. It doesn't take much to just change a shirt.
Well, they didn't find a shirt, so maybe he disposed of it later, but they found that one that didn't have human blood on it.
Yeah. But
like they never found clothes that, and there was the one defense forensics evidence person that was like, there's no way you wouldn't have just brain matter all over you. So when they're talking about cleaning up, like, it's not an easy clean up and hide situation that you can do in that short of time. I don't know.
I just feel like, man, make it make sense. There's just so many weird things in this case.
So I think that's a good point for us to go to what are your thoughts? What would you, if you were a juror, would you have convicted?
That's a tough question. I'm glad I'm not. I don't know. I don't know on this one. There's cases where I just don't know.
I think they said it took them 2.5 hours of deliberation before they came to it. So
it was quick.
It was pretty quick.
They were expecting days.
Yeah. It was what did they say? It was a long case. It was several days, several week case. And for them to decide that quick, a lot of people were surprised.
But I think that his changing story, his being there on that audio, was the nail in the coffin.
That's what the jurors sounded like. For me, I have reasonable doubt with the two gun thing. I don't know if I would have. I wouldn't have wanted him to go free, though, because I think it's more likely that he did it than that he didn't do it.
Right.
And there's really no other evidence that was shown that made me think somebody else did it.
Right.
So I may have eventually, but I definitely would have been one of the undecided jurors for a long time because I would have been like, I still have reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
I still, right now, I still have reasonable doubt.
Right.
Maybe
the cops, the cops obviously thought that he did it.
Yeah.
After their investigation, after interviewing everyone. There was no other suspects that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, there was the original ones, but they seemed like they were lightly investigated, which, I mean, maybe it was just that I mean, maybe they all had alibis too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. It's a hard case. I probably would have found him guilty, though.
I think that's where I eventually would have swayed, but it wouldn't have been in the 2.5 hours. You would have had to work a lot harder to convince me.
Yeah.
It would take it a lot longer.
Because you're right, that 2-gun theory is just... It's hard.
Yeah, it's weird. And then when they can't find it, which I had this in my notes. I should have said it when we got there, but there was even a part in one of the documentaries, I think. It might have been the 48 Hours documentary where one of these guys was like, yeah, I just happened to, all this stuff was happening with the Murdaughs. I thought it was interesting. So I took my drone with a camera and he actually caught on his camera, Buster and one of the other Murdaughs taking a gun out of the house.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And then they were later spotted in Vegas. And it was like a lot of people believed that they were selling things in Vegas and potentially even selling a gun in Vegas. Maybe that was the gun.
Right.
Took it to Vegas and sold it. And now who knows where that gun is, if that was the murder weapon.
Yeah. I saw a lot of online or on YouTube videos. I saw a lot of they're going and partying in Vegas a lot. They're drinking a lot.
There was even phone recordings of him calling back to the prison and talking, Alex and Buster talking. And he's like, literally Alex was talking to Buster and he's like, yeah, they're making a big deal about me going to Vegas. And Alex was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Really? And he's like, they're trying to say I was, out in Vegas, selling stuff and say and Alec almost just seemed like offended, like, oh, you're just having a good time. Why?
Well, your mom and your brother was killed and your dad's sitting in jail. Like,
it was like,
can you simmer down?
Yeah, he's almost like, just kind of like, why would you think that? How dare you guys? How dare you, media?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they're a weird family in that way. Like it's almost, I don't know.
Well, drugs and alcohol came up a lot.
Yeah, it was.
When you have the means, you buy
and
those things.
So that seemed like, it doesn't seem like a Vegas trip was very, they didn't talk about them going to Vegas a lot, but it doesn't seem like that's weird for that family to do something like that based on how the family was before.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I didn't include that because I felt like it was kind of, I don't know, like the video showed him carrying something that looked like a gun, but it was literally a drone zooming in on this really grainy footage of what looked like it was probably a gun in a case of some kind. Then people saying they were in, it was just, to me, it was kind of shaky.
Yeah.
It was a lot of hearsay, like he said, she said. So I didn't want to go too far down that rabbit hole of stuff we don't know for sure.
Right. Well, I will say people are definitely after Buster right now.
Really? I don't know a ton about that.
So they are after him because of the Stephen Smith case.
Oh.
They are wanting justice hard. And
what I've heard about the Stephen Smith case, I'm looking forward to you doing that because it kind of makes me, it kind of makes me wonder if I should be wanting justice for him there too. Yeah. I mean, I do want justice for Stephen Smith either way, but it kind of makes me wonder if I should be looking at Buster.
Well, I guess Buster called 911 here recently and said that there was photos of him in his house and he felt violated by the media. And so he's suing the media because they took pictures of him in his house and he feels violated. There's just a lot of like.
I don't know how to feel about that one because yes, that
They're after him. People are like, "You're next," and he's feeling the heat.
I mean, you're innocent until you're proven guilty.
Right.
The media going and filming you or taking pictures of you in your house, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
It is kind of messed up, but it's also kind of hard to defend what he and his family may or may not have done.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they should probably, my thought where I kind of end on that is they probably should leave him alone because I do think he deserves the privacy until he has his day in court, if he has his day in court of that.
Yeah, and let the system work.
Yeah, let the system.
I know it doesn't always, but
it's hard to have faith in the system all the time. But I mean,
that's the only way you're going to get him, though.
Right? Yeah. I mean, what are you going to find by taking pictures of him in his house now?
Nothing.
Like the Stephen Smith case was what, like 5 or 6 years ago? Oh, so even more than that. So it was like 10 years ago. I mean, it's not like they're going to capture evidence taking pictures of him in his house. There's literally just paparazzi stuff.
Yeah. Just wanting to get reactions.
Yeah. So I mean that part, I think, back off of him, leave him alone, let him have an actual.
He's the only one that hasn't.
No,
that's out there now.
Now, if you're talking about like online sleuths and stuff being like, well, hey, I found a picture of him at this place at this time back then, like I don't have a problem with that because I feel like that's just people trying to investigate the case. But now that's just, you're not going to find anything by taking pictures of him in his house.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not looking for evidence, you're just looking for content.
Right. Well, is that all your info? All you wanted to say?
That is all I had notes on. I am sorry, guys. I struggle with this format a little bit on my notes. I don't feel like, to be honest with you, I don't feel like this was my best of doing these. Hopefully Sarah's editing makes me look good. But
I think you did great.
Let me know what you guys think. Let us know what you guys think of what happened.
That's what I'm curious of. I want to know what you guys think. Is he guilty? Is he not guilty?
Yeah.
All of that. I want to know.
I would love for people to comment and say how they feel about that and have a discussion. Obviously have a civil discussion. Keep it clean. But like, do you guys think that's, two-gun theory, I wouldn't have convicted him? Or do you guys think, oh, well, that cell phone video was damning. Like, he did it. Yeah. Because I've seen, it's very polarizing on the YouTube comments of other videos, too. People don't agree with each other in the comments, even. So I'd love to see discussion and just keep it clean, but discussion where you guys are just talking about points of the case and maybe you guys think of something or saw something that we didn't. Right. And if you have any more information that we don't, like maybe you in there, because this case, like you said, was so long, and I sat there and I watched actual footage of the case that was full time, and one witness would be on the stand for over 2 hours. Like one of the videos I watched was like 3 hours. Right. And that was one witness. There were days and days and days of it. There's no way that I could have gotten through all the footage. So maybe you guys saw different parts of the footage that I didn't see. Right. And that would be awesome. Like, comment, let me know, point it out to us. We'd love to talk about it. Yes. And while you're commenting, go ahead and click like and subscribe and all the things. I'm promoting hard lately. I'm gonna get those 200. I'm gonna make a big deal about this, and I forgot to at the beginning. I should have at the beginning. Our Twitter got suspended. Both of ours, even my personal Twitter, who I don't even advertise, and her code 187 got suspended. So from this point on, this is the podcast that Elon doesn't want you to hear. Yep. So, if nothing else, give us some likes and subscribes to just kind of say, sorry, Elon, we're still going to listen. F you, Twitter. I can't believe that happened. We weren't doing anything.
I was posting my videos.
She literally just posted her videos. I would occasionally retweet her videos, and both of our accounts got suspended.
Yeah.
For what? So, Elon doesn't want you to hear this podcast. Make sure you show him what you think by liking, subscribing, and listening to this podcast.
Blow us up just as an FU to him.
just to get our word out that we're annoyed with Elon. She's kind of like,
I'm clipping this.
You were kind of like, I just don't, it's not that big of a deal to me. Like, Twitter's not as much engagement or anything like that. And you don't use the platform that much. I did. And now I'm sitting here going, well, I can't like do any personal stuff on there just because I was retweeting Code 187, and I think I had in my bio that like like that was one of my links in my bio, was that to the YouTube page, because I was like, well, I mean, I'm on there too, so it's kind of cool to put that out there. Got my account suspended. It's been a week.
You're like, I have no idea what's happening in the world.
I follow like basketball and sports and like video games and stuff, and I have like 6 followers. Like, what am I doing that is really that bad to you, Elon? Like, am I that much of a threat to me and my 6 followers? A huge threat to, and most of my followers, I'm pretty sure, are bots too. So, like,
I was one of them.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you followed my account on there. So I have you as a follower and then 5 bots.
Well, now you don't.
Well, now I don't. Now I don't have anybody. I'm all alone.
Please subscribe. We're just going through it.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my Twitter over this.
He'll be back.
I'll be back or create another one and just never mention Code 187 on it so I can actually use Twitter again.
Yeah. Under it, you should be like, I'm on that podcast that shall not be named.
Yeah. I guess I can't even promote that. Don't promote that you're on a podcast or anything. Just say I'm a person, not a bot. Don't suspend my account. That's my bio.
Okay, anyway, rant over
for now, but I'm going to start using the phrase, this is the podcast Elon doesn't want you to hear.
Yep.
Because apparently it is.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, he can make stupid memes. All right,
we are going to stop there, and we will see you guys next week.
Peace to everybody but people who suspend my account.
Bye.
Peace to you too. Fine.
Bye.
Bye. Love you guys.
Oh, you are mad. You big mad.
Well, what did I do? I retweeted videos that you posted from Code 187.
Just make another account.
Well, it says that like they're gonna suspend even other accounts that you make, so I don't know if they'll let me.
This is why I don't use Twitter.
It kind of makes me not want to use Twitter, but I kind of liked it for a news feed.
Right.
Like I would get to see things like, oh, people posting a new video. That's cool.
Hi guys, I just wanted to say I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like any of the content for Code 187, please click that subscribe button, that like button, that share button. Help us out, help us grow. You can find us on your favorite podcast platforms. Yeah, check us out on there. Give us some ratings. Tell us what you think. We're also across every social media on Code 187. So we're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think that's it. And of course YouTube. So please subscribe if you like our content and spread the word. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.